Evening, you old Chinese. Obviously, I put wrong tune in there. I don't know what. I've lost touch with this thing. Flipping heck, how's they doing? Have you missed me? Did you miss the old muck of me for 2 weeks? Well, I wish I could say I've been on holiday and having a crack, but honestly, I've had my head stuck into law for 2 weeks, putting this stuff together against council tax. And bankruptcies. So, busy boy. In fact, in all truth, the fact that, because I'll tell you exactly what happened. So, when I cracked off 2 weeks ago to open the Streamlabs, it updated. And the update, apparently, as I found out, which about a week later, because when they actually finally got back to me, that update could only be opened by OS X at 12 and above. Well, the old Mac certainly isn't capable of. If I just put that up to that, it might affect the old hard drive a bit. So that's basically what happened. Now, I can't understand why I couldn't go direct into YouTube, because usually you can, but it kept coming up saying my microphone and my video wasn't tallied up. It was. So I'm suggesting that what probably happened where it's so embedded in Streamlabs being used for YouTube that you were a bit confused. But nevertheless, the 2 weeks off was essential for me in order to put this law together. So I haven't had a rest, I have to say. In fact, sticking your head in their world for like that length of time can sort of twist your melon, man, a little bit, you know what I mean? I'm surprised I'm not crazy, I've not gone tapped and all that. Well, I might actually have done, I don't know. I've nothing to reference it from, actually. Anyway, good to see you all muckers, and I did miss you. It was like not meeting old crew on a Sunday night. It was quite weird. So I don't know how it felt for you, but it was definitely weird for me. But I didn't have to put my head into La La Land. And that, on its own, for 2 weeks, was actually a bloody good thing. No La La Land infecting my mind. And I have to say, that was quite groovy. I quite like that a lot. So basically what we'll do is we'll do the live stream that I was going to do the night that it didn't work. And it's basically an expansion on what England is and what it isn't. But also we'll dip our toes slightly, but not in a big way, into what it is they're actually doing. What's actually going on. And I'll tell you for why. I've spoke about the Land Act, haven't I? 1925 Settled Land Act. And we've said, haven't we, the 99-year lease should have run out January this year, but because it weren't kicked off for a year later, it doesn't actually end until January next year. Now, that said, going back to the old protocols of the learned elders of the fruitcakes, they made it very clear that England was going to be the last nation to be pulled into this no-hide system, although they didn't use the term no-hide. We now know what it is. It's a new trust. They're creating a new trust. And the Rothschilds, as the trustees for the beneficiaries, who are the Holy See families, have been moving ever that direction, which is why it's all got wrapped up with all this religious side of things, when in fact Black's law is quite clear that the definition of the term Jew is a banker. Which makes sense, doesn't it? There's no word existent in the biblical text, apart from the fruit bat translations of it under evangelicalism and such. But the term itself doesn't exist in the Bible. So it makes sense, does it not, that blacks would define it as bankers. And how they've used that. Look at how we've been bedazzled by it. By using the term, I've given them all the power to hide behind. Plus, as bankers, using the Holocaust, they've been able to secure shitloads of cash, especially off the Germans. You know, and I think the Germans just agreed to give them each, everybody that survived the so-called fib, 270 odd quid each for October the 7th. I mean, that's what happens when the bankers completely control your country. But back to what I was saying, England was the last nation to be pulled into this no-hide trust because, of course, under Flossie, QE2, the Middle Temple operative pulling everything in, the land, the property, etc., assets, and you, into the inner temple. That's how they used that as a front for all that 70 years. But basically what they were doing, were pulling everything in, getting us on person, so they can pull our estates in there. So basically that's what's been going on. It's all been about just forming this new trust, getting all our assets in through using personage before we recognised it. And of course, all our estates then go into this trust. We become completely decapitated on every level of law because we're not on it anymore. And away they go with everything that we own. Now, of course, it's the UK, a corporation. It's the United Nations, a corporation. It's NATO, a corporation. NAFTA, GATT, all these global international contracts. China, again, it's the shifting the wealth over there into BRICS. So it's the same people, the same bankers running it all. And of course, the biblical tradition in the main is over on this side, the western side of the world, and they've formulated that for it to ultimately destroy itself. Or get each individual sect to destroy the other, which is going down quite well, I have to say. And of course, we look at this UK company. That's what's funding all this immigration. Because let's be frank, chaps. If we said, you're not born here, you don't get a penny, they'd leave and move back to the mud huts next week. All by themselves. Be back on them dinghies going the opposite way. It's the money that's pulling them here. Your money. Why is it your money? Because they've got you, your estate, acting as creditor for their debt. And again, this is what I've been looking through this last couple of weeks with this council tax. It's basically the council have a debt and they're thrusting it upon you. But in order to do that, they have to get you to identify as the person, which ultimately is owned by the Vatican. Now, we went through the Church of England, didn't we? They're going to disseminate the Church of England. It's no coincidence that they've announced that now, because this has to be put into place before January. See, the Church of England is Christian and God lives in there. Not the God, the fruit bat that roams around on the middle plane, or Lucifer, Satan as we know him. We're talking about the God that lives within us. That's the Christian ideology. That's what it was. And it's still in there. And the Church of England still has land. It still has power within Parliament, within the Lords, etc., etc. Tony Blair, that's what he was set about to do, to undermine the bishops from the Church of England because they were stopping everything. That's been succeeded. We've now got the majority of aristocrats are all bastard lines of Charles II, which ultimately means they're all going to obey, not Charles, but Camilla. Because ultimately they're all of the Medici bloodline, and Camilla is of the Medici bloodline, and she's the Queen in Scotland. Now, interestingly, we don't have a monarch. England has no monarch. That's another set piece in relation to dismantling England as the last nation to pull them all. So every other nation that's out there, America, Australia, Canada, Europe, China, Japan, everybody, all your states are already in the Noahide Trust. They're already in there. This is the only place that's left, and it's only left for 6 months. That's it. Once that Land Act ends, then everything, the land, see, they can't shift the land here. They can pretend they've got it, they're doing it, and they're blagging everybody to frighten everybody to death to stop you getting into the guts of it. But ultimately, in a lawful legal standing, they cannot actually do it until January. Okay, that's what's happening. So if we understand England, then America can understand what's happened to it already. Australia can understand why it got rid of the English law and the Constitution and created its own corporate side, tied into United States, New Zealand, Canada, etc. Anywhere that England's laws entered, which of course, England isn't a race. We've said this before. What it actually is, it's a culture. And it's a culture by which no matter what race you are, if you're smart, If you're clever, a smart guy, not some fruitcake that needs all these rules and regulations because you can't control yourself, but if you're smart, then you recognise that actually English law is all about giving you the freedom to control yourself, to contain yourself, to act in a moral standing yourself. That's what it's about. Do no harm, you know? Do not injure. These are basic premises of English common law. So it's more of a culture of law. So that's why we've had so many different cultures on England for so many centuries. We all agreed we like this better than the European law, which were basically Napoleonic law after Napoleon. We don't like the legal system of Rome, which Scotland still holds. It's never left, which is why the base system on the British Isles has been Scotland since David I, especially post-Civil War, when the Whigs, basically Presbyterians, got their line in, opening up the Venetian headquarters into the inner city of London. We've looked at the fact that the original Templars, the temple that they were representing, was built in London. It has nothing to do with Solomon's Temple. It was entirely built in honour of Mary, the mother of the man who came to preach for the lost tribes against the captives that had been released under King Cyrus to build the Second Temple. He was preaching against that, and he was preaching to the Israelites all the way up in Europe, which is why Paul, after he went to Spain. So we've spoken of the fact that this Israel battle that actually went on, that in the captivity they've reformed and created this Old Testament to put them on top, and then they've actually said that this all happened in the Levant. No, it didn't. It happened in Egypt. And so you had the northern Egyptians, the real Egyptians, battling these Hyksos, these fruit bats, who have ties to Abraham, by the way, whether we like it or not. The man who decided it was a good idea because a voice came in his head and said, kill your son, because I'm God. You know, this is the kind of character we're looking at, and everything's been built on that, which has put these Hyksos above everything else, when in fact the Israelites fought 4 major wars against these Hyksos because the Hyksos wanted to implement this one monotone God over them, and basically the only insight that the Israelites would have had then, or a connection to that God, would have been through their priesthood. They said, no, thank you. And then merrily left northern Egypt and became the Greeks. Made civilization in Spain and then moved ever northward. They also moved at the same time to Albion, which is the British Isles. You've got your Druids under the Tuatha De Danann. You've got the Merovingians, which is why they called the Merovingians, when in fact they were actually the originals as Israelites. The Carolingians took that over, especially through Charlemagne, and the rest is history, as they might say. And of course, we've got these Hyksos now acting as a sort of financial administration group for the trustees, who are the Rothschilds. So there's where you get this religious interaction with everything, and everybody thinks that it's based entirely on biblical script, when it's not. It's not at all. You know, go to Norse. The Norse, it were all a pantheon of gods. The Israelites, the Greeks, it was all a pantheon of gods, Olympians. Not this one monotone god. So you've got one main chief, which is Zeus or Odin, and then you've got his angels. You've got the goddesses. I mean, let's look at it as well. Charles despises England. Why does he despise England? Because of the outpouring of grief when they killed Diana, i.e. symbolising that Diana, the goddess, on these islands, were whisked away. Well, he despises the English because of that. Despises it. He isn't the king. He's new notes. He's no crown. Now, when you start to look into this system, didn't we say when we looked into the Church of England that basically the Church of England in its entirety is going to be handed over to a Secretary of State? And automatically we think Secretary of State government, but you've got a Secretary of State of Justice. But more importantly, let's just take a look at Charles. No crown. is that position now? Or them removing the kings and raising up the princes in line with the prince, you know, as Lucifer. And is Charles actually in effect, or let's say the Medici Queen, is that the position of Secretary of State that they're going to implement over the British Isles? Now, this is where it starts to get a little bit interesting. Okay? Because when you start to look at this, and remember folks, the Vatican has been taken over. What it was is not what it is today. And the Reformation, in essence, didn't help in upkeeping what the Vatican was before all this nonsense. However, of course, it was obvious the Vatican did enough people in there back then because they were doing ridiculous things. But John Paul II is probably the man that's really screwed it up in our time as we exist today. But now you look at this Vatican-Banker system, and it's got a Vatican Secretariat of State office. Okay? Now we all know, don't we, that this personage, our birth certificates, the placenta side of things, how they've mimicked the cross and the placenta being fixed onto the cross. You've got your umbilical cord as a separate entity as well, which is the connection between, so you've got your first name, which is actually your surname, because that belongs to the church, and then as soon as you would come in flying, oh yeah, my name's Johnny Boy, you know, Johnny Lipstick, you've then attached that to the surname that you're on the cross. You've come in as the placenta, the dead entity that they control. And this is the schism that they've created, and they've done it since. Remember, the first move was shifting the midwives into, because everybody's grandmas were the midwives back in the day. Then all of a sudden, the system decided, they were deciding who could and couldn't be a midwife, because obviously they needed special kind of creatures to do it, because of course they were stamping your foot, checking your blood, creating title, and fixing people into this system. And then 1933, we had the bankruptcies, and of course, those birth certificates were then floated on the stock market, and they created this hidden ledger. So the debit that they create at the beginning when you're born here on Blighty was your weight in gold, borrowed from the IMF. And off that, once the trust is connected, they've got the birth certificate in, then they're creating this hidden ledger. And that's where this floating of the negotiable instrument, the birth certificate goes on, and that's the actual ledger that they're waiting to take when you die, because they'll pay off the original debit of the gold. IMF is clear, they've got this hidden account with the funny money, with the bonds, with the securities and all that goes with it, and that's what funds government. That's what's been funding these states since 1933, because in our time as alive, we continue to be and offer up our estate as the credit for their debt. So this is the system that they've built, and this looks to us like it's the pinnacle of this system in relation to how it connects to the Vatican. So Vatican Secretariat of State contact information. So when they're saying that they're going to shift the Church of England into a Secretary of State, is it the Secretary of State government? Is it the Secretary of State for Justice? My guess is, because we have no sovereign here, there's no monarch, which means England refers back to the sovereign, which is the people, we the English, we that were born here, okay, and we hold the freedoms. So that being the case, if you're going to keep looking up to these fruitcakes and expecting them to be holding your sovereignty, as was this case in the day, you're completely wasting your time. It's not going to happen. Okay, it's not going to happen. Sovereignty now reverts back to the people, which means the only way this is going to change is if we, the people, get off our asses and start to reintroduce England, because it's a set of laws, it's national laws, and everybody else has to abide them. Even the Muslims have to abide by them, or if they don't, because they cite the deal that Muhammad did with Medina as reason for why they have to obey. They said the king's laws. Well, the king's laws today now, because we're an absent monarch, is back to the people. So that's me. and anybody else that can start to understand this stuff. We're the sovereign. We are the law of the land. Because we're not operating according to the UK corporation, and we're certainly not operating to the 8-pointed star imperial force known as the British Empire. We're not operating to that. England, UK, British Empire, completely separate entities. Okay, and in that with the Muslims, it's very clear, and I don't think Muslims have grasped this, because you can see them all getting excited here, especially with this Jimmy Savile's little boy, Keir Starmer. And then they voted him to jumped on this Green Deal, which again is another corporate contract. But very clearly, Muslims, and this is what you really need to actually reckon with, and that is this. You're either saying that you're in tune with Muhammad, in which case you have to accept that the law of the land is king here, which means we, the English people. Or, if you're not, then what you're presenting to the world, and remember, China's already classed your religion as a mental illness. What you're saying to the world is this. Muhammad cannot be trusted, which means no emissary of Muhammad can be trusted. You're making that statement if you're going to think that you can override English law or the law of any nation that you find yourself in. Now, again, with your books, it's very clear. If you know Islam, and that contrary to it, you kafir. It's not me saying it, that's me giving you what your religion tells you. So you're heading for big trouble. Big trouble. However, I don't really care about that. What my concern is for England. And the only chance we have is that people in England now start to realise that you need to focus your energy to come into grips with this kind of information. Yeah, let them fuss and fart about all they want in their own way. We need to come together, militia, look after ourselves, protect ourselves, and reinforce England. Now, why has King Charles, as they call him, and his Medici Queen got power in our state? It's very simple. Because your councillors, your MPs, your police, your military, the judiciary, of all taken an oath to this foreign entity. This is so clever how they've done this. Thus, that state system, made up of what should be English people, has been gazumped on the ignorance of these individuals that have taken an oath to this foreign entity. And they're in the state system. This is why and how they've managed to achieve this over and above English law. Now, when it comes to immigration, you're funding it by being the creditor to the state and all its agents. Yeah, the Crown Agents Act, very important. You read it because it makes it very clear in there that the Crown Agents have become companies, corporations, and once they do, they can no longer feign that they're acting on behalf of a monarch. Yet, all this paperwork you get from the courts is stamped with a court logo, and it says County Court, and it's got a crown on it. That's fraud, straight away. These people, everything they do is a fraud. And in this last 2 weeks, you will not believe what I've seen in relation to this garbage that these people think means they're intelligent. These people are like infants. Infants, I'm not joking. They're so pathetic. Yet, because you see it when these paperwork comes to you as fear, you look at police, your judiciary, prison, blah, 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 you shit yourself. If you actually looked at the stuff they're writing, and you actually comprehended what they're saying, it's so puerile, it's fucking ridiculous. Now, I know I can say that because I've spent so long studying it, and so now I can see through the glamour. It's so ridiculous what they do and get away with it because they know you don't understand it and you're going to shit yourself. We do have a chance to deal with this. Now, I've had quite an interesting 2 weeks in the physical, forget the internet. In that I've had it acknowledged from old school Catholics that they understand and have seen what it is I'm presenting. But I've also had the same with a Mason, a couple of Masons actually. Because of course, and I've said this always, you will not get change on England without the power of the lodges. But what that means is the members of those lodges have to first recognise that the commanders, the Grand Masters, are all operating contrary to England. They're not Christians, they're Luciferians. And second, that they don't actually need these Grand Masters for the lodges to function, because they're still in command and control of a lot of commerce. Okay, you might not be wholesale, but it doesn't matter. You know, I'm pretty sure we have everything we need on these islands to become wholesale again. We have steel, we can dig it out. We have coal, we have tin, we have copper, we have everything we need. But it needs an about turn from the minds that are actually already in these systems. But what you have to do is disconnect yourself from your Grand Masters. The military have to disconnect themselves from the commanders. The police have to disconnect themselves from their inspectors, because they're all operating under the 21st degree Prussian Knight Noah Hyde Judge. Scottish Rite. That's what's running everything here. Command level, get rid of it. We don't need it. They're in treason, okay? We don't need to hang people these days. We're in the 21st century. But we're building some fucking big prisons. Let's put them in them. All these dumbass civil servants that have oath to this fake entity and put themselves in treason. You know, there's going to be some in there that we don't want to offer an amnesty to because they know what they're doing. But the majority of them are just thick. They don't know any different. We'd have to give amnesty if we want our country back, if we want our politics back. And, you know, how we deal with immigration is simple. If you're not born here, you don't get a penny. You don't get anything. Watch them disembark back in the little dinghies, back to the mud huts, or wherever the hell they come from. They're only here for the money. Simple as that. Cut off the money, they'll disappear. We're not responsible for them because they've come here for the wrong reasons. They haven't come here because they're refugees. They've come here for money. So they can send it back to their kin or bring the kin here. If they're claiming to be Muslims, they're certainly not Muslims. They're kafir. You have to see it like that if you're coming from a religious standpoint. You owe these people nothing. They're coming in here not for any other service but to serve the empire, because they are the empire, whether they know it or not. Doesn't matter. But we've got 6 months, ladies and gentlemen. 6 months to gather together as England and reinforce our laws over and above this absolute garbage. Otherwise, everybody's going into this new arc. It's as simple as that. And there's nothing else to be said. Americans, that's what's happened to you already. You're in the arc. Your personage, your trust, your estate is in the arc. It's in. Everywhere, Europe. England is the last. So, but it's the same mechanic. It's the same mechanic across the board. And you can see now that the Vatican system, that this Jesuit system, which is basically Banker's system, Holy See Family system, has got its specific office, Vatican Secretariat of State, and all these secretaries of states in every nation is going to answer to that position. Now, whether it's Fat Fingers, whether it's the Secretary of State for Justice, because of course we're dealing with ecclesiastical, and the entire judicial system is based in ecclesiastical, all of it. Everything else is a step off. So it could even be the Secretary of State for Justice. My guess is that it is going to be these patrons that are calling themselves king just to pretend, because of course he's not a king. We are the king, we are the sovereign, but only if we say we are and move in that direction. You've got to stop thinking that, oh, we don't want to offend anybody. Fuck, we're going to offend people. It's as simple as that. And we're not going to care about it. They don't care about offending us. Why are we scared about offending them? Stop it. Stop being silly immediately. But more importantly, get a grip. There is no connection whatsoever between England and Israel, between England and Palestine. The connection comes in the British Empire and Israel, the British Empire and Palestine, the UK corporation and Israel, the UK corporation and Palestine. So if you're playing into this mind job and thinking that actually you're going to make a decision in how you vote based on who's being friendly to which side, you're not on England. You're not thinking England. You don't understand England. You've no concept of England. You're running on emotion. You're running on garbage, which is why Tommy Laxative and his Word on an All Day Bender crew have got teeth. You know what I'm saying? And all the cronies that play around that. Right now, you've got the Tories disassembling themselves with Farage acting in order that they ensure that's the case, because they're going to pull in another communist session. You got it with Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. Now they need it in again with Keir Starmer. He's going to nick our national electricity and gas systems and put it into a corporate entity called the Great Energy Company, or whatever the hell he's talking about. And you're not seeing what's actually going on here. What is energy? Nobody can define it, because they can't say it's electricity, they can't say it's gas, because we own the electricity grid and we own the gas grid. It's as simple as that. So they can't use those terms. They have to invent another term, and you have to believe it. So that's the interesting side of relating to how this now, you can see now why they want to disassemble the Church of England, because it's a Christian organisation. This isn't. John Paul II was no Christian at all. It's very well known. This is why he was despised while he was in office. You know what I'm saying? So that's basically what I wanted to get across in relation to just a deeper understanding of this personage, this trust system, and especially when it comes to things like the birth certificate, okay? It's important that you get this stuff in your mind so you can start to see what they've done, and then we need to look at how we undermine it. But, you know, it all goes back to this new Vatican-II banking system. That's where it all goes. And there we go with that. Anyway, so, right, I've got two lots to look at here. So, who's joined us tonight, anyway? So, Jerry says, welcome back. Otherwise, I hope you're well and considering. Yeah, very well, Jerry, thanks. I hope you're well. Cos says, howdy. How you doing, Cos? Untitled says, final life of mixed turns, late night Sunday news. Yes, he's back. Great to see you again. Let's get ready to rumble. And don't forget the popcorn. And don't forget to hit that like button. Nobody's hit it yet. What's going on? I can see you, I've got a... And there's a big delay on it. Anyway, never mind. Who cares? And I've put good evening inmates, because I can actually now do a bit of jigging. Guitar Girl says, evening everyone, Sean, brilliant to have you back, my old mucker. Good evening to you, Guitar Girl. Nice to be back. Slipknot says, alright, Sean, Jackie and everyone, alright, Slipknot. Mark says, evening all. And Sean, evening, Mark. Ulick says, hey, Sean and chat, snazzy new intro, Sean, you going orbital on us. I just thought we'd have a bit of a change. I did try to use it before, but the other PC we're having it we're like... And I've understood why. The other one, we're using the software to sort of energise the live stream, whereas this system is using hardware, so it's a bit more stable, so that went quite well. So I just thought I'd jazz it up. Yeah, orbital if you want, because Glastonbury's on, isn't it? Of course. So why not jazz it up a bit? Jerry says, Mew says, it's coming up, he's there. Good evening, chat. Alright, Mew, how you doing, mate? LFX gives a thumbs up. 2 weeks, yeah. I did miss you all, I have to say. We're like, not meeting up with my mates, it was quite strange, but I did enjoy the not getting my face in La La Land. But I were busy doing other things, so it's not like I've had a rest in truth. I, for one, missed Sunday nights with the Wise Salmon gang, says Mew. Well, good for you, and so did I. David Dolby says, I can't find the definition anywhere. So this is probably going back 10 years. So look back to what kind of which edition were going on back then. Because you got to remember, the Freeman movement has been going on for a long time, and the one thing that we're very good about it all is we were out in everything, every trick in every book. And of course, as they create new editions, they're hiding it. So, but mark my words, we knew it then. I was reminded of it when I mentioned it last time, because I'd forgotten. So don't give up hope that it's not been and is defined in that way. It certainly is. Keep seeking. Mark says, evening Mew, hope you enjoyed your poetry snack. Oh, Mew's into poetry. Redemptionism is my word of the day, says Ulick. June Gower says, evening Sean and all in the chat, good evening June. The recusant vagabond, hi Sean and hi all, how are you doing Jeff? Chungi, I love England. Well, anybody that says they don't just clearly doesn't understand it. They think England means empire. England's a nation, a culture of law that gives us, the smart people, the freedoms. The numpties, no, you don't get freedoms. That's why the subcultures can't understand it. They can't understand it. The mindset is nowhere near understanding England, because look at these subcultures. They need so many rules and regulations in their world because they've no self-control. None. They've no self-control. You know, I watched something last week, the other week, that were quite worrying, that Asda, somewhere down south, there was a guy giving a white girl hell for wearing shorts. Giving it the big, we don't do that. We have a dress code in here. Now, this is what Muslims don't understand. Because they can't understand. Because they come from a completely different culture. On England here, our girls can walk around half naked. And we will watch and look and enjoy it. And we'll get excited. But do you know what's the difference? We don't want to rape them. Because we have self-control. And we don't go away and completely focus to that actual event. Because we've all grown up. We are in a position of controlling ourselves. We are not just thrown asunder because we see something that's gets a bit of chemistry going. They haven't reached that nowhere near. Which is why they deal with their women in the way that they do. So they don't have to confront any kind of stuff that comes with that. It's like being in Playpen. You know, you're in Playpen, you grow up, you climb out of Playpen when you want, but then when it gets a bit difficult, somebody pressures you, you're back in Playpen screaming, God said, God said. It's no good. It's infantile. It's fine in your own cultures, in your own place, but it's not going to work here. You come into a civilised country and there's some smart people about. And them smart people eventually are going to start talking what it is everybody needs to reckon with. So it's got nothing to do with any... I mean, and another thing with the Muslims is they're very big on minority rights while they're a minority. But the minute they become a majority, there is no minority rights. And I'm supposed to accept that as we're smart people, that you're in tune with some kind of major God up there. No, it's infantile behaviour, that. And you stand behind these systems and claim that it's nonsense. You know, you've no self-control whatsoever. You have a need for these systems that are so controlling so you can feel safe in them. And that's fine for that kind of mindset. But that's no good for people like me and people that are English. It's no good. It's not going to be acceptable. Not by any means. No matter how much these treasonous councillors, MPs, judiciary, police and military are going to support you. It's a nonsense. And like I've said, China has already demarcated Islam a mental illness. It's destroyed over 150,000 mosques. You're not seeing the big picture, chaps. China is the New World Order. It is the New World Order. You've been demarcated a mental illness. Where do you think that's going to go when you start to show the world that what China has said is correct? Use your loaf, people. You people that have been born here, surely you can recognise what I've said there, the value of it. Not because I'm saying it. I'm referencing out there facts of the state of the play today. You're being set up to express what you hide and pretend it isn't, and you bring it out into the open for the entire world to see. You know, it's like, you know, you're playing a dangerous game, people. A dangerous game. I love England, says Chunga. Yep. How can you not? LFX says, we think that the title gave it away. Flat lie royals. Is it true if, hypothetically, the royal family all die, then the Queen of Denmark becomes Queen of England? What? No, because they're destroying England. I can't. There's no intention of putting another monarch on England. But they hope in that period that they've got, we won't recognise that means that the sovereignty reverts back to us. No, they're going to get rid of England. It's the last nation to be pulled into this no-hide trust. So I can't see, by any stretch of the imagination, that that's even on any radar. So I don't know where you've got that from, Chungi. Gary says, good morning. Good Monday morning. Good Monday. Oh, of course, over there in the old house. Good morning to you, Gary. Jerry says, and the ledger on your headstone shows all that walk by your grave. Another thing I've remembered. If you want to keep your land so you can pass it on to your kin, you've got to bury yourself on your land. This is why they want you in their graveyards. This is why they want you to be cremated in their buildings. Yeah? Dominion over land, but you've got to be buried on it. And then it passes automatically. There's no claim. The godless system has it all wrapped up. You need a will, you need a this, you've got to inform, you've got to get a death certificate, da-da-da-da-da. That's the godless system. Under God, under dominion of land, it's yours. And if you want to make sure it passes to yours, you will be buried on it. Another great trick that they've played without anybody realising. Let's have a look. How your arses, says Kieran Martin. How are your arses? My arse is alright. Yeah, it's yours. Untitled says, John 3:7 says, God did not send the Son into the world to condemn the world, but in order that the world might be saved through him, by sacrificing himself for us on the cross. Okay. The punishment for all of our sins at once. Yeah. Slipknot says, alright, Mew. Ulick says, how's your foreskin, you mean? He's getting a bit bloody rude on here tonight, I'll tell you. You can tell you've been locked up, you lot, at Wild Asylum for 2 weeks. You've obviously been very naughty. Lex says, evening, Sean, welcome back. Evening to you, Lex. Don't do business with criminals. LFX gives it the old big... LFX, no hiding, no likey. Kerry says, love from Ireland. Good evening to you, Kerry, and love back to Ireland. No white flag being waved all this weekend. They think it's pride. Yeah, they're thick. They're thick. Jerry says, hi, Kerry and Kieran. Yeah, LFX, UK, Rain, PMA. Kieran, Martin, Jerry, Kerry, Ulick. You are all loved. And the four-leaf clover. The recusant vagabond says, hey, Sean and everyone. Good evening to you. Nicely put out, Sean. Good piece. Hey, Jeff. Excellent. We better shout out Jace. You know he's lurking. There he is. The lurker. Hello, Jace. Good to see you. Hell then. I've seen my brother's not on, so he probably doesn't know. Laughing. Explosion. Thumbs up, Jace. Good stuff. LFX, it means on land. If it wasn't true, I'd laugh. I know. Planting the seed of inheritance. Guitar Girl says that probably explains why those families, the big country estates, Blenheim, etc., have their own mausoleums and family tombs on them buried on their land. And the same across America, if you remember. Everybody had the graveyard on their own land. Then it passes. So everything that we think is natural and normal is actually this godless system called the legal system that they have all us believing is the system. Yeah, aren't we tapped? Well, I think we might be. Anyway, let's get stuck into some more English law because where is it? Oh yeah. Wrong one up, that's me trying to find something quick, smart before live started to stick on as a... So the third part of the Institute of the Laws of England concerning high treason, other pleas of the Crown and criminal causes, and this of course is Edward Coke, the man who pretty much rebutted the Stuarts' claim to divine right of the kingship, because he was reinforcing the common law and reminding them that of course the king is subject to English common law. And the third part of the Institute of the Laws of England is the third volume of the series of books and reports written by Sir Edward Coke, 1552 to 1634, in an attempt to provide an exhaustive review of English law. Born February the 1st, 1552, at Mileham, Norfolk, Coke was arguably the most prominent lawyer, legal writer and politician during the Elizabethan and Jacobean eras, and a defender of the common law over the use of the Stuarts' royal prerogative. Coke began his studies in 1567 at Trinity College, Cambridge, during the years of the Visterian controversy, Puritan protests against the Church of England. See, people think, don't they, that the Church of England is Puritan? No, the Puritan side of things came out of Scotland, the Presbyterians. And there you get the Whigs, who became the Liberals. Yeah, that's where the Liberals gained sort of their entrance into this system, because it was mainly just a Tory gig, or Catholic bandits, as the term references. So Tory is actually an old term for Catholic bandits. And in came the Puritans, the Scottish. It's always been this battle with what they created in Scotland from David I, shoving itself over England. And after the Civil War, pretty much Scotland were running these islands. So everything that's gone on, if the Scots don't like it, well, unfortunately, it's all come from your landmass. And England's took the blame because it's all been centred in London. So there's just, I'll put that up, of course, but it just gives you some ideas of what treason and why treason's so important. And also the fact that the first thing Lizzie did with Blair is shift the treason laws, and they turned it into, what did they turn it into? They turned it into the Crime and Disorder Act of 1998. That's the first thing they did, and that was to get the treason side of things off, to be replaced with this stuff. And of course, from this is where you get your antisocial behaviour stuff, which pretty much in 2003, the Crime and Disorder Act 1980 were replaced by the Antisocial Behaviour Act of 2003. Then you've got the Behavioural Insights team. You've got BlackRock telling you that everybody has to change their behaviour and that they're making people change their behaviour. So this is how they've took you off the idea of treason by shifting this new raft of garbage in. And further into the background goes any idea of treason. Now, let me have a look. What's that? Okay, so there's the establishment of the Church of England. And as I said, it's being shoved into the Secretary of State's hands. So who is that exactly? That's what we need to ascertain. So I'd suggest there's three possibilities. Now then, this is an interesting bit of a gig. Ephraim Israel or Judah Israel. A Greek mariner named Pytheas made the first recorded voyage to the British Isles in the 4th century BC. He circumnavigated the island of Britain, explored the northern lands of Europe, and was the first to describe the Celtic tribes of Britain, the midnight sun, dramatic tidal shifts, and polar ice. When he returned home, he wrote an account called The Ocean, Periatou Okanu, in Greek, that circulated widely throughout the ancient world and was read, discussed, and debated by scholars for centuries. Unfortunately, the ocean has not survived. Only fragments of it remain, paraphrased or excerpted in the writings of other classical writers such as Strabo, Polybius, Timaeus, Eratosthenes, Diodorus, Siculus, Pliny the Elder, but the fragments we have are significant, Cunliffe said, as they contain a multitude of astronomical, geographical, biological, oceanographic and ethnological observations that have considerable scientific and anthropological significance. If the British Isles, Britain, is Ephraim and America is Manasseh, what has the house of David or Judah got to do with anything? Well, it hasn't. It really hasn't. It's got nothing to do with the 10 tribes of Israel. In fact, what did it ever have to do with the British Isles? Nothing. It was a complete and utter Israelite gig. And they, forever, coming from the east, Babylon, up through the Mongols, the Persians, the Venetians, have been taking it over. The document shows the family tree of the illustrious royal house, but Judah is entirely separate from Ephraim, Manasseh, and that's the illustrious lineage of the royal house of Britain. And there's your link. Is Britain as Ephraim the red heifer? Now, is this interesting and worrying? Okay, I'd say both. So is Britain as Ephraim the red heifer that these fruit bats are aiming to sacrifice? Yeah, look at what they've pulled in here. Yeah, look at the subcultures they've brought in here. Excerpts, it says 19, and his father refused and said, I know it, my son, I know it. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. But truly his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his seed shall become a multitude of nations. Now that's obviously, this is the dark side of things, isn't it? The twins that we've discussed already on the true meaning to the cross in the mimic. And he blessed them that day, saying, in thee shall Israel bless, saying, God make thee as Ephraim and as Manasseh. And he set Ephraim before Manasseh. And Israel said unto Joseph, behold, I die, but God shall be with you, and bring you again unto the land of your fathers. Genesis 48, and it came to pass after these things. Let us consider the natural jealousy between Ephraim and the other tribes on account of the heirship of the temporal promises belonging to the former. This was the human means which produced the severance of Israel from Judah. But, again, when you get into the lore of it, they were never together. Ever. It was what we call Judahites or Ixos trying to force themselves over the tribes or the principalities in Egypt for their one and only God. But the Israelites could only communicate with that God through their priesthood. Well, who in the right mind is going to accept that? We're not, are we? Just in the same as, the Israelites are not going to accept the imposition of Islam. It's not going to happen. There's going to be war. It has to be. And that is, of course, the intent of what these bloodlines are doing. And for that, you just have to reference the 3 World War scenario presented by Albert Pike to Mazzini. The Third World War. This is what it's about. It's about the banking families getting rid of everybody by having them destroy each other. Number of prophecies still recognise the separate existence of the nation of Israel, with a future entirely different from that foretold for Judah. On the identity of the British with Israel, Israel of Samaria, that is, Ephraim, Israel, as opposed to Judah, Israel. Yeah, and it is. There's completely 2 different gigs. Ephraim was called Engel and Heifer. So are they offering up not so much Britain but England as the red heifer in this ridiculous sacrifice that they're trying to get going? Because I watched an interesting video the other week where a guy has come out and said, actually, we missed the whole thing and the third temple has been built, and then pointed to this particular place, hidden behind a big wall, by the way, so you wouldn't necessarily see it unless they focused to it. And then he went through how the actual place where the third temple had to be built isn't actually where the mosque is. So that are we sort of like coming to an idea where we can see through these deceptions now? One being that the heifer is actually not a red cow, it's actually England, because it references and represents Israel, the true Israel. The house of David continued to rule over these three tribes, Judah, Benjamin and Levi, and they were the captives in Babylon. The King Cyrus, who had been invited into Babylon by the ruling elite, because he was like a bit like William of Orange, a war leader invited in to take over. Well, King Cyrus was exactly that. He didn't take over Babylon by force. He was invited in, and they got rid of all the opposing sides and forces. And of course, Judah, Benjamin and Levi were the captive, and they built the second temple under King Cyrus that Jesus came to preach against and destroy, and he did. One tribe was to be given or lent to Judah and the royal house of David. This tribe was Benjamin. Of Ephraim was to come a multitude of nations, the nation and company of nations promised to Abraham, Isaac and Joseph. If therefore the nation and company of the nations be found in the British Isles. You see, I have a serious issue with Abraham being anything other than the Ixos, and therefore in opposition to what was the northern principalities in Egypt at those days. So everything gets intermixed and interwoven. So it's no wonder, it's no wonder confusion reigns. But yeah, I mean, I can't claim to be an expert, but even some of this stuff just doesn't sit right. But in the sense that the Israelites were definitely the Europeans, big chunks of the Europeans, the Nordics, the Americans, because the majority of America up until the blue bellies went in were basically a reference of English and Germanic and Dutch peoples. And then in came the Holy See with its Yanks and completely annihilated it. Where are we? As served for the main body of Israel, approximating greatness to the empire of Ephraim, Israel's wanderings over the Scyths. See again, Scythians, the Saxons, the Cymry, the Oxonians. So this is your Merovingians, it's your Tuatha De Danann, it's your Nordics. I mean, they got connected back on the Silk Road to Byzantium, you might say, because the Comnines were a big part of this setting up the First Crusade, which, of course, in my opinion, pulled the West over into the East, and then it brought back the dark spirit of the deserts, the demonic, into Europe. That's how I've seen it, Russia Japhet, or the Muscovite, the Cossack and the Mongol, a detailed identification of the powers whose doom is foretold in Ezekiel, the empire of the Tsars. Verse by verse from Genesis to Malachi, an examination of the Old Testament scriptures bearing on the discovery of Israel. The Russian chapters of Ezekiel, and there you have a link. WMH Milner, active 1915, the Royal House of Britain and Enduring Dynasty. Now, just to expand on what I was bringing to you before about the 8-pointed star, because do you know what? I'm seeing it everywhere. Whoever said once you understand symbolism, you'll see the game, we weren't telling fibs, because this 8-pointed star, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. So, do we have a Kabbalistic square and circle? Okay, which again referenced in the occult Masonic. Then you've got NATO again, 8-pointed star. How many times have we seen that insignia and accepted it? And we know that she were a Rothschild. Again. With the 4 horses. Oh no, they're not 4 horses. Oh, there's 2 lions, a unicorn. Unicorns and lions. There you go. Remember, this is chaos. 8-pointed star of chaos. NHS ambulance service. Can you see why they're trying to give this all free rein on our roads with these sirens? that do my head in. I've seen these guys racing on the roads only to go and get a brew. And you're letting it happen. You know, it's... Look at that there. Again. All chaos, but there you go. Very recent inclusion to store-bought. Delivering sustainable solutions means delivering chaos in the food chain. Does it not? And that's a very recent gig. Yeah, but you couldn't get it any more close to that than... There you go. Yeah. And Eddie Store-bought there. He says, some Sumerian students see the 8 elements as representative of pyro, hydro, cryo, electro, anemo, geo, dendro, void, and light. Others suggest the 8-pointed star as likely in reference to the 8 fundamental elements used to make up Tevat. Includes the heaven element. In game, these are associated with nations and icons that embody control or regulate them. The 8 elements can also be associated with stars, humanity, and a half moon. Some references the 8-pointed star of Sumerian mythology motifs, and the 8-pointed star represented a fall to the underworld. Full spectrum control appears to be the essence of the symbolism, and everything references the gods of Sumer and Babylon. The Sumerians worshipped Inanna as the goddess of both warfare and love, unlike other gods whose roles were static and whose domains were limited. The stories of Inanna describe her as moving from conquest to conquest. She is portrayed as young and impetuous, constantly striving for more power than had been allotted to her. In archaic Uruk, she was worshipped in 3 forms: morning Inanna, Inanna Hud, evening Inanna, Inanna Sig, and princely Inanna, Inanna Nun. The former 2 reflecting the phases of her associated planet Venus. Her most prominent symbols include the lion and the 8-pointed star. In Neo-paganism and Sumerian reconstructionism, Inanna is the primary ancient source for Aleister Crowley's Babylon, a principal goddess in the religion Thelema. Inanna's name is also used to refer to the goddess in modern Neo-paganism and Wicca. Her name occurs in the refrain of the Burning Times chant, one of the most widely used Wiccan liturgies. Inanna's descent into the underworld was the inspiration for the Descent of the Goddess, one of the most popular texts of Gardnerian Wicca. Now, Star of Ishtar, again, 8-pointed star. You know, full spectrum control, representing all the elements, but chaos in the control of those elements. So, if you've got a nation, they control the aspects of the nation that make it work, and then they form it to chaos in order they can bring order. And we're back to these old ancient images. The 8-pointed star was Inanna's Ishtar's most common symbol. And so you've got 8-pointed star, crescent moon, and the reference in the sun. Yeah, here it is shown alongside the solar disk of her brother Shemesh, Sumerian Utu, and the crescent moon of her father Sin. Now, when you get into this lore, the son of Nanor Sin was called Allah. Okay? And he was a rebel. So, what are we seeing in this? Yeah? What are we seeing? And there we are. I've actually missed an image off there. You know the image we had before where the guy sat on the demons and then the 8-pointed star is there again being hung from... But I've missed that off for some reason. It should be on there. It's not. Right, so that's just a little bit, get that in your minds. Is England the red heifer? And America, Manasseh, which of course, the 2 nations that they're really aiming to destroy is England and the United States. Because of course we both operate English common law, which gives us the freedoms. They don't like that. Now, this is another... You'll just put you through some points on English law to get it in your mind, and you can further study it if you so wish. But we need to start to grasp the importance of what it was our ancestors set up. The submission of the king to the law was proclaimed by Henry de Bracton in De Legibus et Consuetudinibusum Anglae, possibly written between 1272 and 1277, and that McIlwain considers the most important book on law and constitutionalism in England or any other European nation. So this Henry de Bracton. For George Lawson, the conflict between the King and Parliament after the 1642 Civil War had provoked a complete dissolution of the state and the reversion of power to the people, the sole legitimate subject to constitute a new authority. So after the Civil War, according to the law people of the day, because they killed the king, sovereignty came back to the people, which is why they shoved on Charles II. And they've told us that because the people wanted it. No, the people were happy to retake the power of sovereignty in the people. So these tossbags put this shithead on, who had bastards everywhere, and you could say 90% of the aristocracy today on these islands are of his bastard lines, including Camilla. The sole legitimate subject to constitute a new authority, sovereignty, then did not reside in the two chambers of Parliament, but in the people. Locke would concur in his writing of the second treatise on civil government. The Scottish Whigs did not. And there I have a link to a Whigs gig on the old website. Two subsequent laws approved during the reign of William III completed to a point ratified what was disposed in the 1689 Bill of Rights. It was the Triennial Act of 1694, by virtue of which the King is compelled to call Parliament at least once every 3 years, and the Act of Establishment, approved on the 12th of June 1701, with the fundamental aim of ensuring the succession of the Crown within the Protestant line, and eliminate all the doubts and disputes that for this reason could arise. This act, in addition to demanding that in the future the heir to the crown had to be in communion with the Church of England, prohibited to solicit the forgiveness of the Great Seal of England in the impeachment laid out by the Commons. Lastly, but by no means least important, the Act of Establishment ratified the rule of law with these words: the laws of England are laws acquired by its people by virtue of birth, and all the kings and queens that occupy the throne must conduct their government in accordance as it is disposed in those laws, and its ministers and officials must conduct themselves in the same manner. Okay, but we are the king, we are the sovereign. It's up to us to make it happen. We have no monarch, remember that. We didn't have a monarch for the last 70 years either. Now, there's another document that I've put up on my website. I'll flick through it after this one, but there's the link to it. So this is a treatise on the history of English common law. Very important that you get that in your mind. Prince of Orange Declaration, 19th of December 1688, British History Online. There's a link. Will concur in everything that may procure the peace and happiness of the nation, which a free and lawful Parliament shall determine, since we have nothing before our eyes in this our undertaking but the preservation of the Protestant religion, the covering of all men from persecution for their consciences, and the securing to the whole nation the free enjoyment of their laws, rights and liberties under a just and legal government. Okay, so this is what I was saying before about a nation of people who had self-control and were given the freedom to prove that self-control with certain common law things that would put you back on track if you stepped off it. Okay, that's what civilization is, and that's what I mean when I say that England is more a culture of law as opposed to necessarily a race. No parliament can be lawful for which the elections and returns are made by popish sheriffs and mayors of towns. So mayors, the system, they're getting it up, aren't they? And as we've just looked at, everything's being handed over to the popish shag-ass Secretary of State. So there it is, broke it in immediately. And that's broke the legislature that William of Orange put in. And Murray. Mayors, remember, mayors, yeah? Not allowed. So that tithead in London, treason isn't the word. And therefore, as long as the authority and magistracy is in such hands, it is not possible to have any lawful parliament. And though according to the constitution of the English government and immemorial custom, all elections of parliament men ought to be made with an entire liberty, without any sort of force, or the requiring the electors to choose such. Well, the Privy Council is forcing that through its control of the Cabinet and ultimately the whip system. So the entire Privy Council are in treason. Persons as shall be named to them, and the persons thus freely elected ought to give their opinions freely upon all matters that are brought before them, having the good of the nation ever before their eyes, and following in all things the dictates of their conscience. Yet now the people of England cannot expect a remedy from a free parliament legally called and chosen, but they may perhaps see one called in which all elections will be carried on by fraud or force, and which will be composed of such persons of whom those evil counsellors hold themselves well assured, in which all things will be carried on according to their direction and interest, without any regard to the good or happiness of the nation. Well, aren't they saying that they can vote now? They don't even need ID and they don't even need to put a signature in if they can't read or write. Well, that's aimed at fucking subcultures, isn't it? Directly. Church of England. He did then promise and solemnly swear at his coronation that he would maintain his subjects in the free enjoyment of their laws, rights and liberties, and in particular that he would maintain the Church of England as it was established by law. So de-establishing the Church of England is against the law. The deplorable state to which the Protestant religion is reduced is apparent, since the affairs of the Church of England are now put in the hands of persons who have accepted of a commission that is manifestly illegal and who have executed it contrary to all law. Persons. Illegality and incompetency of the said court of the ecclesiastical commissioners was so notoriously known, did so evidently appear that it tended to the subversion of the Protestant religion. They do evidently shew that they are restrained by no rules or law whatsoever, but that they have subjected the honours and estates of the subjects and the established religion to a despotic power and to arbitrary government, in all which they are served and seconded by those ecclesiastical commissioners. Now, this Vatican ecclesiastical office of secretaries of state, that's what it is. Whereas no nation whatsoever can subsist without the administration of good and impartial justice, upon which men's lives, liberties, honours and estates do depend, those evil counsellors have subjected these to an arbitrary and despotic power, have carried this so far as to deprive such judges who in common administration of justice shew that they are governed by the consciences and not by the directions which the others gave them, by which it is apparent that they design to render themselves the absolute masters of the lives, honours and estates of the subjects, of what rank or dignity soever they may be, and that without having any regard either to the equity of the cause or to the consciences of the judges, whom they will have to submit in all things to their own will and pleasure. In contempt of those laws, have not only armed the papists, but have likewise raised them up to the greatest military trusts, both by sea and land, and that strangers, as well as natives, and Irish, as well as English, that so by these means they have, having rendered themselves masters both of the affairs of the church, of the government, of the nation, and of the curse of justice, and subjected them all to a despotic and arbitrary power, they might be in a capacity to maintain and execute their wicked designs by the assistance of the army, and thereby to enslave the nation. Well, look where all our army is, playing fucking stupid over in Europe. Prince of Orange Declaration, 9th of December 1688, and that's what we've just read. And that can be found on the British History Online. Blackstone on the third species of treason. The third species of treason is, if a man do levy war against our Lord the King in his realm, which of course we are now the King, the people, and this may be done by taking arms not only to dethrone the king, so that's these knives that these immigrants are playing with, and anybody that's playing with knives and attacking us, the sovereign, is in the third species of treason. Not only to dethrone the king, which is the people, but under the pretense to reform religion or the laws, or to remove evil counsellors. So by whatever use they might be talking about taking arms against the king, which is the people, whether they use are going to try to reform religion or even the laws, or to remove evil counsellors, or other grievances, whether real or pretended, for the law does not, neither can it permit any private man or set of men to interfere forcibly in matters of such high importance, especially as it has established a sufficient power for these purposes in the High Court of Parliament. Neither does the Constitution justify any private or particular resistance for private or particular grievances, though in cases of national oppression, the nation has very justifiably risen as one man to vindicate the original contract subsisting between the king and his people, to resist the king's forces by defending a castle against them. Now, acting for the absent king, because they're not accepting that we are the king, of course, is the Privy Council, headed by Penny Mordaunt. To resist the king's forces by defending the castle against him is levying of war, and so is an insurrection with an avowed design to pull down all enclosures, all brothels and the like. The universality of the design making it a rebellion against the state, a usurpation of the powers of government, and an insolent invasion of the king's authority. Now, we have to transfer that language to what's actually going on, and that is that the Privy Council, the Cabinet, the MPs, everybody that signed an oath to this foreign entity are those that are actually risen against us because they're using force, they're using the threat of force, they're using fine, incarceration. Yeah, that's it. So you've got to take this language, but then invert it into how that works, and because you get what I'm saying there. But a tumult with a view to pull down a particular house or lay open a particular enclosure amounts at most to a riot, this being no general defiance of public government. So if two subjects quarrel and levy war against each other, it is only a great riot and contempt, and no treason. Thus it happened between the Earls of Hereford and Gloucester in Edward I, who raised each a little army and committed outrages upon each other's lands, burning houses attended with the loss of many lives. Yet this was held to be no high treason, but only a great misdemeanour. A bare conspiracy to levy war does not amount to the species of treason, but if particularly pointed at the person of the king or his government, it fails within the first or encompassing by imaging the king's death. So we are the king, and our real government is the government, and they've took it over because they've altered this foreign entity. So we have to invert that and see that councillors, MPs, police, military, judiciary are all in treason. It's just so happens that they're the dicks running our state. Do you understand that inversion? It's so important. Otherwise, you might think it's saying something it isn't. Blackstone felt more comfortable reflecting the law from a historical perspective than from a philosophical one. From the specific to the abstract, it's for that reason that in his commentaries he attempts to transform the debate regarding the natural rights of men into an exposition on the historical rights of Englishmen. Blackstone himself expressly recalled that the absolute rights of the English are usually called their freedoms. Yeah, freedoms. Freedoms that being founded in nature and in reason were simultaneously inherent to the English style of government, being recognised as much by the statutes approved by Parliament, from the Magna Carta to the Establishment Act, as by the common law, two types of juridical rules, on which he expands in section 3 of the introduction titled Of the Laws of England, and there's a link. If the Constitution confirmed by non-statutory Magna Carta, the Great Charter, so it's non-statutory, remember, provides protection for the people by limiting the monarch, crown, government, etc., to not do anything that diminishes the people or infringes on their rights, then all the legislation that appears to be in breach of, interferes with, subverts the Constitution, e.g., cannot apply to the people. The trust in its current form is the problem and needs to be reverted, with the estate being vested in the living man. Yeah, can you see It's got to go back to people. They've shifted us all into person. Yeah? For their part, common law judges defended the supremacy of customary law not only over the law of legal prerogative but even over the statutes approved by Parliament, as stated by Chief Justice Sir Edward Coke in 1610, when he argued in Bontham that if it happens from our writings that in many cases the common law will control the laws of Parliament, and sometimes it will declare them totally void. For when an act of the Parliament is contrary to the law and reason, or incompatible or impossible to execute, the common law will control it and proceed to declare its nullity. The civil registration process has nothing to do with living or dying. Its business is only to record birth and death for the purposes of settling estate and vesting properties into the trust. Yeah, we're born, and if we die, we go on our own land, but not with this system. No man shall be condemned at the king's suite, either before the king in his bench where the pleas are coram rege, and so are the words nec super ibimus, to be understood, nor before any other commissioner or judge whatsoever, and so are the words nec super mittimus, to be understood but by the judgment of his peers, that is, equals or according to the law of the land. So when you have a judge or jury, they've got to be at least equal to your understanding and intellect. You can't have a load of fruit bats that live on, like middle class estates, for instance, being 12 peers to judge me. They don't know their ass from the fucking elbow. And there you have it, the equals. Now it says, we shall sell to no man justice or right. So you think you have to pay to go King's Bench? You think you have to pay to go Chancery? Bullshit. We shall sell to no man justice, but man is the term. We shall deny to no man justice or right. We shall defer to no man justice or right. Sir Edward Coke. Very important. The General Register's Office is part of His Majesty's Passport Office and oversees civil registration in England and Wales. General Register's Office, GRO, official information on births, marriages, civil partnerships and deaths, and there's your link. Problem with the current Chancery Division is it costs so much. Yeah, well, it shouldn't. So you'd have to put it in correctly. Magna Carta 1215, clause 40, which reads, to no one will we sell. Yeah, we've just looked at that. To no one will we sell, to no one will we refuse or delay right to justice. Justice delayed is justice denied. The Chancery Division deals with business, personal law, trust, personal law, probate trust, personal law, insolvency, and land law in relation to issues of equity, trust, person, High Court of Justice. See footnotes and attached link, blah, 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 e.g. Lord Denning, and if the courts of common law do not uphold the rights of individuals, unlawful invasion by government officials. Now you've got some on sovereignty and liberty. Commonwealth presents the jurist is neither a conservative promoter of arbitrary power or a modern liberaliser of the common law. He's a proceduralist who emphasises due process of law as the way to reconcile political liberty with parliamentary sovereignty. Blackstone's jurisprudence reflects a particular reading of political history, one that sees Parliament at the forefront of the protection of English liberties. While the legislature is capable of tyranny, it is in the king and the courts that historically he finds the greatest examples of arbitrary rule. So if the Privy Council is acting for the absent king, it's his job to ensure that everything else is operating correctly, just as the Earl Marshal, the Duke of Norfolk, it's his job to see the continuum of the Constitution. So straight away we've got two bunch of wankers who are not doing the job. They have castles and property, and maybe we have to start putting liens at 20 billion on the things. Bill of Rights, constitutional and ordinary legislation prohibits interference with vested property rights in some jurisdictions. Common law protection of real property. This chapter is about the common law protection of vested property rights in land, real property. The chapter builds on the discussion in chapter 7 and discusses how vested property rights in land are protected from statutory encroachment. Laws that interfere with rights in land and how such laws might be justified, as noted in Chapter 7, the common law has long regarded a person's property rights as fundamental. Chapter 7 reference was made to the case of Entick v Carrington, which concerned trespass in order to undertake a search, and interference with real property in possession of another, rights such as those protected by the tort of trespass to land have long been exercisable even against the Crown or government officers acting outside the lawful authority, the Constitution, i.e. limited monarchy and government. In Plenty v Dillon, Mason C.J. Brennan and Tui J.J. said that the principle in Entick v Carrington applies to entry by persons purporting to act with the authority of the Crown, as well as to the entry by other persons. Now, when you get into the Crown Estates Act, because the Crown agents have all shifted into companies, they're no longer allowed to claim to be acting for the Crown, either in word or insignia. And the fact that these county court logos are coming in a circle with a fucking crown on is in breach of the Crown Agents Act of 1998. Okay? So this is what I've been dealing with this last couple of weeks. The third absolute right inherent in every Englishman is that of property which consists of free use, enjoyment, disposal of all his acquisitions, without any control, a diminution, save only by the laws of the land. The laws of England are extremely watchful in ascertaining and protecting his right. Upon this principle, the Great Charter has declared that no freeman shall be diseased or divested of his freehold. So again, if you have the freehold, forget what they say, oh, some freeholds are subject to that. No, they're not. But by the judgment of the deceased or divested of his freehold, or of his liberties or free customs, but by the judgment of his peers, or by the law of the land, not government garbage. And there you got a couple of links. Citizens were granted civil rights. So this is when we're shifting off man, of people, into citizen. But it's still a protection. But it's from the state. The Constitution conferred by non-statutory Magna Carta, the Great Charter, provides protection for the people by limiting the monarch, crown, government, etc. to not do anything that diminishes the people. The right of conquest acknowledges the status quo, being by definition stronger than any lawfully entitled governance which it may have replaced, was therefore more likely to secure peace and stability for the people, and so the right of the conquest legitimises the conqueror. Now, we went through, didn't we, a couple of years ago, didn't I go through occupation, and it's pretty clear that when you're occupying, you're not allowed to change the rights that the people are used to. Now, of course, they've been trying to change the idea of what rights that you're used to by putting you all on these statutes. So even under the occupation, and let's face it, we are all under military, it beats it. Because the rights, as you understand your rights on England, then they want you presenting to these military magistrates and saying, look, those are the rights that I expect. You can't interfere in that. We also looked at the fact that they cannot push the economy beyond its capability. But when it gets to the point where they can do no more with the economy, then they're allowed to eat the occupiers, or what do they call us? Inhabitants. Yeah? They can eat you. So when you're getting fined on the street for parking, when you're getting fined on the street for littering, all these little bits and bats, you know, all the Road Traffic Act and all its fines, etc. And it's all money gathering so that they don't have to attack the economy. And we went through all that a couple of years ago, didn't we? So I'm pretty sure you're all... So the origin of the modern European state lay in war and preparations for war, the state's relation to ethnic identity formation. In order to continue and fund warfare, conquest and security, only states with sufficient capital and large population could afford paying for their security and ultimately surviving in a hostile environment. Those in power were forced to develop a means of extraction by, for example, introducing taxation and conscription. Subsequently, these means of extraction resulted in the creation of state bureaucracies and a centralised state. Well, we know they're talking about conscription. The US has passed a bill that automatically signed up from the age of 18 to 26 in the US. The state completely in its genesis, essentially and almost completely during the first stages of its existence, is a social institution forced by a victorious group of men on a defeated group, with the sole purpose of regulating the dominion of the victorious group over the vanquished and securing itself against revolt from within and attacks from abroad. Teleologically, this dominion had no other purpose than for the economic exploitation of the vanquished by the victors. England still had physical form in 1840. It had a queen, rights and privileges, duties of citizenship in exchange for land appears to be the game through Victoria. So through Victoria, basically what they were getting us to hand over our land rights without us realising it for rights and privileges, duties and citizenship, which today is benefits in it. So the Rothschild Victoria is the wench under which that sort of began. Cede to Her Majesty the Queen of England absolutely and without reservation all the rights and powers of sovereignty which the said confederation or individual chiefs respectively exercise or possess or may be supposed to exercise or to possess over their respective territories as the sole sovereigns thereof. And of course now they're removing these kings and they're putting in secretaries of state. Yield to Her Majesty the exclusive right of preemption over such lands as the proprietors thereof may be disposed to alienate at such prices as may be agreed upon between the respective proprietors and persons appointed by Her Majesty to treat them in that behalf. So that's what we're happening in Victoria. That's where they were getting us to let go of our land rights and property rights and basically handing them over for liberties and garbage. And then there's a bit there on New Zealand, what happened there, and they're all striking about this, that, and other. Well, actually, boys, there was something like, how many guys signed it? 39 of your chiefs over there in New Zealand signed up to this bullshit with Victoria basically handing over your land rights. So if you're still striking your eyeballs out about, oh, you've nicked it, no, they haven't, your boys did it. You know what I mean? And this is what's gone on everywhere, that Victoria pretty much headed in that day. So New Zealand, you need to see that. The full text of the Te Tirito or Waitangi, the Treaty of Waitangi, Te Papa. You signed it yourselves, boys and girls. Now, the Privy Council is the government according to its own website. In order to carry out the political aims of the state, the King used what during the reign of Edward III, the first Tudor King, became to be known as the Privy Council. I don't believe for a second he was the first Tudor King, so I don't believe that for a second. The King appointed at will the members of his council, heir to the Consilium Regis and predecessors of cabinet. Apart from assisting the monarch in administrating justice, the Privy Council made law in the name of the King, issuing ordinances and proclamations, the content of which varied as it covered all branches of the administration, and eventually forming the body of administrative law called ante litteram. From Latin charter, leaf of paper, a writing tablet, the Greek cartes, layer of papyrus, from Old French charter, letter, document, covenant, from Latin chartula, cartula, literally little paper, diminutive of charter, carta, paper, document. And there's just a bit of a breakdown. A.V. Dicey said its exact nature is nowhere clearly described. The difficulty of ascertaining it is true nature. The councillors, in addition to the authority which they claimed as members of a powerful court, assume to themselves a further right of a most oppressive nature, and that's the Privy Council, the Arnold Prize Essay 1860. So the Privy Council have been slowly but surely gaining power, and of course it's been working in as respect of the absent king since 1953, when they put a queen on. So, it's had 70 or more than 70 years to position its power base. A royal charter is a formal grant issued by a monarch under royal prerogative as a letters patent. Historically, they have been used to promulgate public laws, the most famous example being the English Magna Carta of 1215, but since the 14th century have only been used in places of private acts to grant a right or power to an individual or body corporate. A royal charter is a way of incorporating a body that is turning it from a collection of individuals into a single legal entity. Once incorporated by a royal charter, a body surrenders significant aspects of its control of its internal affairs to the Privy Council. Incorporation by Charter is a form of government regulation, as future amendments to the Charter and bylaws of the body require Privy Council, i.e. government, approval. Well, Charter is Privy Council independent. We are the independent professional body for solicitors in England and Wales. We are run by and for our members, says the Law Society. Now, unless you're a member of the Law Society, and if they're saying you want to see the contract, wet signatures off you and off somebody representing the Law Society where you're in contract with the Law Society and subject to its garbage. List of organisations in the United Kingdom with their own charter, and there you can get it in there. Where the English Charter refers to the ancient liberties of the City of London, the Irish Charter reads the City of Dublin shall have all its ancient liberties and free customs. Only gradually were its famous provisions, originally reserved to all free men, extended to all men of whatever estate or condition. And that's from the History of Ireland. And there you've got a link. A corporation is usually a group of people or a company authorised by the state to act as a single entity. A legal entity recognised by private and public law is born out of statute. A legal person in a legal context and recognised as such in law for certain purposes. Early incorporated entities were established by charter, by an ad hoc act granted by a monarch or passed by a parliament or legislature. In England, the government created corporations under Royal Charter or an Act of Parliament with the grant of a monopoly over a specified territory. The best known example, established in 1600, was the East India Company of London. Queen Elizabeth I granted it the exclusive rights to trade with all countries to the east of the Cape of Good Hope. Some corporations at this time would act on the government's behalf, bringing in revenue from its exploits abroad. Yeah, robbing the shit out of Spanish galleons. Financed by the House Pallavicini on behalf of the House Farnese. All Holy See stuff, this. Some corporations at this time would act on the government's behalf, bringing in revenue, blah, blah. Subsequently, the company became increasingly integrated with English and later British military and colonial policy, just as most corporations were essentially dependent on the Royal Navy's ability to control trade routes. And then you've just got Captain Archibald Moore Ramsay, a dramatic historical work which blames the behind-the-scenes the author imprisoned by the Churchill government for opposing the war. So Archibald Ramsay were imprisoned, arrested under Regulation 18B, which you've heard me speak of before. On the 23rd of May 1940, he was detained without charge or trial in a cell in Brixton Prison until the 26th of September 1944. Now, the moment the day war was declared by Churchill or the War Cabinet, Regulation 18B was activated and handed over to Victor Rothschild. And they arrested psychics, sensitives, anybody that they knew would be talking contrary to war. I mean, the last thing you wanted were all these widows going to see a psychic, and psychics, he's come back, husband, and saying, "Listen, fucking con, we're just getting massacred out there." Yeah, they arrested them all. And that's Regulation 18B, which I have spoke about before. So that ends that paper. So let me just look. Claim to be the government themselves, right? What they do, they're acting for the absolute king. Privy Council members, this is current. Lord President of the Council, Penny Mordaunt, with the cross at his oath, at his ceremony, where she the big cheese dick. Richard Tilbrook, Deputy Clerks of the Council, Sarah King, Niall Clark Petty. Look, Diane Abbott, for God's sake, for all fuss and piss that's going on about her. Lord, Nigel Adams, Lord, Sir Robert, Sir Clive, Sir Danny, blah, 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 Baroness. There's your aristocracy people. The majority of them, all bastard lines of Charles II, the man they put on the throne to stop sovereignty moving back to the people. Yeah. See this game, folks. We've got to start to see what's happened. All these bastards are in treason. They're all oath to a foreign entity and pretending it's a king. Look at them all. Your hoity-toits. Running the shit show. Every single one of them. So you can't get any clearer than that. There is the administrative level of the enemy. It's not the Germans. It's not the Palestinians. That's just a diversion. And it keeps the immigrants happy and concerned. When if you're really concerned about Palestine, get your fat fucking ass over there, son, and show us that you're concerned about it by putting your money where your mouth is. Otherwise, you're just a fat piece of shit baying for everybody else's children to go and fight the war. And the Green Party seems to be full of them. I voted Green Party and I decided to go for the Green Party because they support Palestine. Fuck Palestine. What the fuck's Palestine got to do with England? Nothing. What's Israel got to do with England? Nothing. So there we go. Privy Council. Right set of bumholes. And we've done that one, haven't we? England is not a racist culture of law. Now this is the doctrine that I suggest, if you're interested in fully understanding your rights, your freedoms, and that you want to start using it in your paperwork, this Joaquin Varela Suzanne's Carpetana a foreigner had to write a piece on English common law. I mean, this is just how stupid the English have become. It's introduced from the lower Middle Ages to the Revolution of 1688, Bracton or Fortescue, the formulation of parliamentary sovereignty under the Tudors. The Tudors were bastards. Absolutism and constitutionalism under the Stuarts. The rule of law and parliamentary sovereignty, Parliament sovereignty in John Locke's second treatise. Government by the consent of the governed. Excuse me. Separation of powers, supremacy and limits of the legislature. Sovereignty of the people. From Hume to Paley, David Hume, Locke's critique. Parliament is sovereign, not the people, so they're talking that shit. William Blackstone's ambivalent attitude. Jeremy Bentham, the sovereignty of the electoral body, John Austin and the House of Commons, the trustee of the electorate. Dicey and the distinction between juridical and political sovereignty. And this is basically a brilliant piece to give you a full examination of how our constitution, how our law were actually formed. And then you can start to see how they've mimicked it in statute so that they can then take away what was a common law right and give them power over it by putting it into statute. Clever stuff what they've done. But Bracton's a very important guy indeed, and how many of you are aware of Bracton? Not many, you know. And it's a superb paper. So I will put it up on. It's quite a big one, but it's you really want to get into where what rights it is you want to be enforcing, that you can present to a military magistrate and say, no, actually, these are the expected rights when you are sworn to uphold what it is I expect, because I'm not everybody. You'll not find the word everybody in my name. You know, it won't. It's not there. Yeah. Excellent piece of work, that. Real superb. So I'll not go through that because we're pretty late on, but I'll put it up underneath after because it's exceptional data. Ooh. So that's what we were going to do, and I had a bit more all planned out as well. So I had to scrape it back together for tonight. We nearly didn't have it again because I want myself out of this PC. About an hour before, I'm like, oh my God. So I had to reset up Streamlabs in another account, and oh my God, I thought, what is going down here? I'm thick. I'm getting thicker. Anyway, so what are you up to? Oh my God, there's a lot of chit-chat going down. Where do we get to? Yeah, Jersey's lurking. Probably explains why those families have been, we've done that. Oh, PY's up. Hey, you and Paul. England, the red effort. That's very plausible. Absolutely. So England, you better get a fucking grip. If that's correct, they're planning on cutting your dick off. Pulling your tits off and that. Yeah, and look at who they've brought in to do it. Are you having it? British Bulldog. Come on. England, forget England football team. They're the biggest bag of shit I've ever seen. It looks like they're scared of tackling. I've only watched 10 minutes of one match. What an absolute fucking joke. Put your energy into England, the nation. Forget England, the bag of wing kickers. If you could only do that, boys, we'd have our country back in 10 minutes. Keep away from Tommy Laxative and his Royal on an All Day Bender crew. We've got a problem. A big fucking problem. And right now, people are just diverted. And it's not the way. Evening all hope as well, says David. Hello, David. Pyramid is a 4-pointed. Meant 8. Okay, so is it pyramid? 1, 2, 5, 6. Yeah. But it's not a star, is it, as such? Anyway, worth keeping in mind. Jerry Sonamick, we even see the symbol of the Irish police there in gold in Garda, yeah. Store-bought had all the Tesco at one time recently. Really? Well, that's a very recent gig, and I saw it. It's like I said, you see these symbols, I'm seeing it fucking everywhere. So by rights, the British Union has broken their Act of Settlement. Well, the Act of Union is the problem, by golly. This is our problem. No foreigner should be in power, says our English Bill of Rights. Exactly. We haven't got an English Parliament. No, we haven't. Correct, June. We have CEOs of corporations masquerading as... Well, it's the Privy Council. And the aristocrats. Hoity-toity. All working for them Holy See families that I put that tune to. So, by the way, I've put some tunes, they're just tunes, on a platform. You can just listen to it if you want, or you can throw me a tenner. Whichever way you want. It's another way of getting money to me and you get something back. And you can listen to it in your car. And there you go. So it's on. It'll be on end of this. It's Outraged Muse. I've called the website. Because I am outraged and I am a bit of a muse. Where are we here? We had it here 2 weeks ago and they were busy buzzing new arrivals to vote and influence them. Yeah, it's fucking ridiculous, isn't it? They're actually getting away with it. We're all sat there playing with ourselves watching football. Well, I'm not, of course, but... LFX says, Syed Cork Ward. We have homeless in masses now. Never seen anything like yet. It's disgrace. All legislation in BS. Jerry says, same here. June on Dublin alone, we have over 10k homeless, about 15k nation with 4k and blah, blah, blah. It's outrageous, it really is. That's why the country is skint. Well, you're crediting their debt. Every time you sign your name to that surname that the Pope made clear belongs to the church. And he did make it clear, ladies and gentlemen. And you stick your first name across to it. And away they go. You are crediting their debt. Yeah, more dent on the pennies, says LFX. I don't know. It's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy and getting worse. But not sticking my head in it all these last 2 weeks has been exceptionally groovy. So I have enjoyed that side of it. By the way, how is the picture tonight? Because obviously I had to reset things and I can't remember how I had it set before. Is the quality of the video coming across quite well? Is it same as normal? Is it lesser or what? Just let me know what you're thinking there, because I'll be able to change it again just to make sure that we're at least giving it the same kind of thing as we had before. So is the quality the same, sound and more video? Is it still okay? It's weird this, looking at delay here and me talking to you here. Yeah, it's quite a big delay on it actually. I don't think it's a minute at the moment though. 5 times 4 says, what's that mean? Is it any good? Thanks Sean, great cast tonight, picture and sound crystal clear. Thank you Jerry, that'll do indeed. Right, so with that, it's so glad to be back with the clan, having a good shindig and a chit chat, and I've missed you all. Each Sunday it's been like so much missing, you know, so much just missing. The week's been great because I haven't had to put any effort in to this, but I've been busy on other things. But that Sunday night, and I just thought, there's just something jolly well missing here. So it is good to be back. It's good to see you all come back. Never mind that. I thought you might all run off. 5x5 hoops. In God's land. Okay. Gonna have to put my glasses on, says David. And well, there you go. It's better. Oh, well, that's even better. Oh, is it? It's better. That's going to be because this one's working not on the software, it's working on the hardware. So it's not straining as much. So, all's good. All's ended ends well for tonight. I hope some of that data is going to be interesting for folk that are actually looking to do something. But 6 months, ladies and gentlemen, before this land act ends, and they shoved merry old England and all its estates and assets, which means you, and your kids, and your grandkids, and your cat and your dog, and your ferret, into the no-hide system. Well, there we go. And I'll say, have a great week. So hope it doesn't piss down. Till the next time.
electronic engineering.